came home to my kids watching a video of me and my boss. Then my tearing daughter gave me the papers. If only I could go back in time, I would have done things differently. I messed up big time. I destroyed my beautiful family with my own hands, all because of greed and lust. I never imagined my life could turn sour in an instant. I came home one day and met my kids watching a sex video of me and my boss. Ridiculous, you might think, but wait till you listen to the full story. Hey Reddit, for the sake of privacy, I will be using fake names. My husband David, male 40, and I, female 35, have been married for the past 15 years now, and our marriage is blessed with 2 girls, twins. My marriage wasn't perfect, but it was the best. I honestly don't know what came over me and made me destroy everything. It all started 5 months ago when I got transferred to my present place of work. I noticed my boss took a keen interest in me. He would flirt with me at every given opportunity, get me lunch on his way back from meetings, and give me random gifts, but honestly, I didn't read any meaning to it initially. I thought he was being generous and was just trying to make me comfortable since I was new to the environment. I thought he would get tired and just stop one day, but everything continued. He even graduated from just sending me little gifts like perfumes and color to sending sentimental gifts like underwear. It was at this point that I knew something was wrong, but I was too scared to confront him. Everything continued for 3 months. I can't even lie. I was enjoying the attention and benefits that came with it. My boss is a very fine, handsome man. To top it all, he is also rich. Every woman would do absolutely anything to be with him. In just 3 months, he had spoiled with the most expensive gifts you can imagine. Things I never dreamed of having in my entire life. I honestly couldn't wait for him to ask me out. A part of me wanted him to ask me so badly, but when I remembered I was a happily married woman with 2 kids, I would just compose myself. I love my husband so much, and the thought of cheating on me always creeps me out because he is practically my everything. He sacrificed a lot for me to be at the top of my career today. He was there for me physically, financially, and emotionally. We have been through a lot of thick and thin together. My only problem with him is that he is a boring person. Unlike my boss, who is the life of the party. I'm an accountant, and to get to the top of my career today is all thanks to the incredible man I married. He invested all his money in me even though he didn't earn much. And he even denied himself a lot of good things so I can further my education. What about the kids? A few years ago, David got a juicy job offer in a faraway city from where we live, but he refused to go because I was schooling at that time, and there was no way I could combine my school loads and the kids because our kids were very young then. Worst of all, we couldn't afford a nanny. So David stayed back and continued working at his old place of work, even though the new job offer would have boosted his career and even our finances, but he turned it down for me. Do you see why the thought of cheating on him creeps me out? Even though we have our differences at times, I can bet with everything that David is a good man. But my boss seems to be perfect, with money and everything. One day my boss called me into his office and handed me an envelope. I hurriedly opened it. I thought it was an open check or something, but I was even more excited when I discovered it was a ticket to Hawaii. Our company was chosen to attend a business conference, and my boss picked me to attend the conference with. He was supposed to attend the conference with his PA and HR, but I was surprised when I was the one picked instead. I was shocked but excited. I have never been to Hawaii before. What am I even saying? I have never really traveled outside the state before. I have spent all my life in Los Angeles. I grew up there and even got married there. So everything about me revolves around Los Angeles. I got home that day with so much happiness. I met my kids and husband, and I immediately told them about the good news. My husband was shocked, and he asked me to carefully explain to him the role I would be playing at the conference. I was taken aback by his question, and I didn't know what to say. He told me an accountant had no business on a trip that was not financially related. Truth be told, he was right. The business trip was for top CEOs and their PAs. I honestly didn't have any reason to be at the conference. If there's one thing I can bet on is my husband's intelligence. You can't fool him easily. At that moment, I knew he could jeopardize my chances of traveling if I didn't act fast, so I got defensive. I told him he was jealous of my career and trying to stop me from attaining greater heights. I called him all sorts of names, from insecure man to career stopper. He got fed up with my tantrums and told me I should do as I please. The next day, I dressed up pretty fast and dashed out to the airport. My boss was already there waiting for me. Seeing him all glammed up gave me some kind of unexplainable goosebumps. My boss upgraded my ticket from business class to first class. I was flabbergasted. It felt like I was dreaming. I never imagined I would one day fly first class in my entire life. About 5 hours and 15 minutes later, we arrived in Hawaii. I slept off that I didn't even know when we arrived. Before our arrival, my boss had already made reservations at a fancy 5-star hotel, so we just took a cab straight to the hotel. But I got the biggest shock of my life when I discovered that my boss only made one reservation in his name. When I asked why he did that, he told me all the rooms were booked at the time he made the reservation. It was at this point I started suspecting my boss was up to nothing good, but I was too engrossed in my greed to care. He asked if we could share a room, and I foolishly accepted. That's how I lodged in the same room with my boss. I didn't even know what came over me. Immediately we got inside the room, one thing led to another, and I made out with my boss. The shocker of it was that it wasn't a one-time thing. We slept together all through our entire trip. I felt bad about it at first. I hated myself for cheating on my lovely husband. But with time, I convinced myself that I was doing everything for my family because I knew my boss would fire me the minute I turned down his advances, and that would make us go broke. So, with time, I adjusted with everything and just went with the flow, but that didn't stop me from feeling guilty. Our business trip, or should I say the vacation, was over and we flew back to Los Angeles. My kids were excited to see me, but I couldn't say the same for David. Our relationship changed. I think he started suspecting me from the moment I told him I was going to Hawaii with my boss. David started paying close attention to everything I did, which made me walk on eggshells anytime I was at home. I didn't want to give him more room to suspect me than he already did. My romance with my boss was mainly at the office since we were both married. We did everything discreetly, but soon everyone at the office got wind of our romance. At this point, I was too deeply in love with my boss to care. I could hear the gossip anytime I walked by, but I didn't care. My female colleagues especially were jealous. Who wouldn't be, though? They wanted to be me so badly because they all wanted to enjoy everything I was enjoying. If looks could kill, they would have killed me with their looks. One day while at work, David, my husband, called and asked me to meet him at our favorite restaurant after work. I wasn't happy because my boss had earlier promised to take me to a 5-star restaurant that evening, so in a way, David was disrupting our plans. I left work that day feeling sad. I arrived at the restaurant and met David seated there. Honestly, I felt somehow I didn't even want to sit down because I didn't want to be seen in such a place. I've so gotten used to eating at expensive restaurants that eating at just any restaurant felt like torture. Like I couldn't believe I missed out on an opportunity to eat at a 5-star restaurant just to come to eat at a cheap local restaurant just because my husband wanted us to have a stupid dinner date. It doesn't make any sense. Why a dinner date all of a sudden? Why today? Why not tomorrow or never? I planned to just see him briefly, then dashed out and went to meet my boss at the 5-star restaurant. I told David I couldn't eat anything because I was still going back to work, so whatever he had to say, he should make it brief. He begged me to please sit and order something, even if it was just a drink. I didn't want to disgrace David or make him feel bad, so I just sat down and made an order. But deep down, I was fuming with anger because David just ruined my chances of eating in another exquisite restaurant. After we had our dinner, David broke the ice and told me the reason he brought me out was for us to discuss ways we could spice up our marriage. He told me he noticed we were drifting apart and that we needed to spice things up a little. He reminded me of everything we had been through together and how we had overcome the storms that were meant to destroy us. At this point, the log on my eyes cleared immediately, and I remembered all the sacrifices David had made for me to get to where I am now. I felt bad for him. Deep down, I knew he didn't deserve everything I had put him through. I cried like a baby as I listened to him refresh my memory about how far we've come. It was at that point that I made up my mind to quit the extramarital affair I was having with my boss. It took one heart-to-heart conversation to make me realize what I was doing was wrong. I have decided to quit my job and also my relationship with my boss, but I'm scared. I don't know how David would react when he finds out that I cheated on him with my boss. I don't think he would ever forgive me. I know David is a good man, but I don't think he will ever forgive me if he finds out that all the money I have been spending was from my boss. Men can do the unthinkable when their ego is bruised. I need honest advice. What should I do? Should I confess everything to David and just quit my job? Or should I quit my job and pretend like nothing ever happened? I'm in a state of a fiasco right now, and I seriously need help. I will be in the comment section, so please be nice. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm back to update you guys on my story. I read through the comments and all I could say is that we've a lot of bitter people out there. But anyway, I decided to continue working and also continue having an affair with my boss after weighing the pros and cons. I concluded it was best I let the sleeping dog lie because I knew we could go broke if I quit my job. David's job cannot really sustain us because he took a lot of loans for my tuition. So in a way, I'm sacrificing my dignity for the betterment of my family. My boss and I continued our office romance, not caring about what people were saying. Everything was going smoothly until one fateful day. I arrived home and met my teenagers watching an unclad video of me and my boss. I almost died at that instant. A lot of things were just running through my head. I was shocked to my bones. I had a lot of questions, but I couldn't speak. I was too stunned to speak. Everything felt like a dream. It was when one of my daughters handed me a paper that it dawned on me that I wasn't dreaming. I gathered myself together and opened the paper and discovered that the paper was a divorce paper. While I was trying to make sense of everything, David arrived and asked me to leave. I still didn't understand what was going on. David started calling me all sorts of unprintable names. He told me that he started suspecting when I went on a trip to Hawaii with my boss, and ever since then he has been monitoring me. He told me that he gave me a lot of chances to come clean, but I refused and continued with my illicit affair. He told me he already had the videos when he took me out for dinner, but he wanted to give me the chance to come clean. At this moment, I fell on my knees and started pleading for mercy. David left me there on my knees like a fool and started throwing my things out. I was shocked when the kids joined him to throw my things out. They told me I was the worst mother ever, and that they were ashamed to call me their mom. I couldn't hold it any longer, so I told them I did everything for them so they could live a comfortable life. I didn't even finish my statement before David gave me 2 hot slaps. I felt humiliated. I couldn't even recognize the man in front of me. David turned into a monster. He wasn't even ready to listen to anything I had to say. He dragged me outside and flung all my things out. Seeing how he was acting like a lunatic, I picked a few of my things and left. I decided to give them some time. Time, they say, is a healer of all wounds, right? I went and lodged in a hotel, but I couldn't sleep. The face of my daughter crying kept replaying in my head. I felt bad for subjecting them to that kind of pain. I also felt bad for David because he doesn't deserve everything I have done to him. I left the hotel and rushed down to my parents' house. I explained everything to them, even though I knew I would never hear the end of it because they're very fond of David. But I was desperate. I needed to save my marriage. My parents were mad and disappointed at me, but after a lot of pleading and begging, they promised to follow me back to David's place to plead on my behalf. 3 days later, my parents followed me to David's place to plead, but all their pleas went on deaf ears. David didn't even allow us to enter inside. He treated me and my parents like commoners. Even my parents were disappointed with his attitude. Seeing that David's mind was made up, I signed the divorce papers and handed them over to him. I knew there was no point crying over spilled milk, so I decided to just put everything behind me. The divorce proceedings soon started, and we both agreed on joint custody of our kids, even though the kids categorically told me they didn't want to have anything to do with me. Their words hurt me so much. We got just custody of our kids, and after the divorce, reality set in. I became very broke because hiring divorce lawyers is not cheap, so I decided to go back to work. While all this was happening, I stayed away from my boss because I blamed him for everything. But with the divorce, I told myself I had nothing to lose anymore, so I went back to work, but nothing prepared me for the surprises that awaited me. I arrived at the office, and everything seemed to have changed so fast. I wasn't allowed into the boss's office. I was told he was busy. While waiting for him, everyone was just gossiping about me. They were whispering, but audible enough for me to hear. I ignored the cheap gossip, and I continued to wait patiently for the boss. Soon a female colleague walked out of his office with a messed up lipstick, and I didn't need a soothsayer to tell me what had happened. I'm familiar with that scenario. I've been there, so I know better. I was very mad and disappointed at my boss. I couldn't believe he had moved on to another person so quickly. For months I was away. Worst of all was that the fool didn't even try to contact me to know how I was coping. He didn't even look for me. I was so furious because this was someone who had promised me heaven and earth. When his secretary informed him I was around to see him, he told his secretary to tell me he wasn't around. I felt humiliated. Everyone was just staring at me with funny smirks. I wanted the ground to open so bad so I could just disappear. I walked out of the office with my head bowed down. I was so ashamed of myself. I became an object of ridicule. I didn't know everyone was really praying for my downfall this bad. On my way out, my boss's new chick stopped me and warned me to stay away from the boss. She told me I'd been replaced and that I should go and never come back again. She also told me how she recorded me and the boss making out and sent the video to my husband. She told me she got angry when I took her place and went on that business trip with the boss. She told me that she made up her mind to deal with me from that day. So one fateful day, she placed a camcorder in the boss's office, and luckily everything that transpired between us was recorded. She told me how she got my husband's contact information from HR, so she emailed him the video. At that point, I couldn't hold myself anymore, so I jacked up her clothes and slapped her. A fight ensued between us and security had to step in. I left the office with a bruised face. That day it dawned on me how stupid I have been. I can't believe I ruined my marriage because of my lust and greed. I thought it was love, but it's not, it's lust. I also realized that my boss was a chronic womanizer. I wasn't the first and certainly won't be the last. I tried calling him several times, but he kept bouncing my calls. He even blocked me at a point. I felt used and discarded. I fell into depression because of this. Every day I would be lost in thoughts thinking about how things would have been if I had handled the situation differently. I didn't know what to do with my life anymore, and nothing made sense to me anymore. I tried contacting my kids several times, but they also blocked me. I became lonely and broke. I decided to look for a job, but all efforts proved abortive. Luckily for me, I was able to secure a job at my best friend's fashion store. I became the cashier there. It wasn't big, but I was glad because being busy helped me forget about my predicament. Update: Hey Reddit, I'm back to update y'all on my story. I'm still working as a cashier in my friend's store. Life still doesn't make sense. I'm still struggling with my new reality. I have tried to contact David, my husband, to apologize properly, but have refused to give me a listening ear. I have also tried to mend my broken relationship with my kids, but I have also failed woefully. Everyone seemed to have moved on except me. Time has stood still for me. It's almost a year now, and everything is still fresh in my memory like it was yesterday. I still regret everything. Truly, not all that glitters is gold. I lost a good man because I was fascinated by riches. My boss deceived me. It was later I discovered that he was even the owner of the company as claimed. Everything belonged to his father-in-law, and he was just a face to it since the man was retired. He lost everything when his wife got wind of his cheating escapades. His wife divorced him without a single penny. The fool lost his home and all his riches. The cars he drove all belonged to his wife. I was happy when I learned of the misfortune that has befallen him. At least he got a taste of his medicine. As for David, my ex-husband, I heard he finally finished paying my tuition loan. Not just that, he also got a better offer in New York, 100 times better than the one he rejected before. He relocated with the kids to New York. I cried when I learned of this good news. David had always assured me that things would be better and that we would smile again. I wish I listened to him. I wish I was a little bit patient. Now I would have been enjoying life in the city of New York, starting life all over again, but now I'm stuck where I used to be. If only I was driven by covetousness, I would still be with my family by now. I decided to put everything past me and just move on with my life. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to make something out of my life for the sake of my kids. I want to be the mother they will be proud of tomorrow. Even though I made a foolish mistake, it is silly for me to continue dwelling on my past and wishing to have done things differently. I can't change or undo everything that has happened, but I can still rewrite my story. That is what I'm doing right now. I'm saving up money to acquire more knowledge and more certification so I can land a good job. I know one day David and the kids might forgive me and we would be reunited like one family again. This is the hope that keeps me moving all day. I'm taking one step at a time. I will come back to update y'all on my story. I just hope it's a happy one. Happy.